I'm Conway Mayor Bart Castleberry, and it's my honor and privilege to have the opportunity to provide another State of the City address to you. Mitch, would you ask Mitch if he's gonna pull? Good evening, everyone. We always proceed each council meeting with a word of prayer and the pledge of allegiance. If you'd like to, please feel free to join us. Would you bow, please? Lord God, we thank you and praise you for your grace, your goodness, your mercy, and your love. Lord, we thank you for, I personally thank you for the good report we got back from our grandson today. Lord, we lift up Miss Isby and her family as they go through a time of loss. Lord, we pray about our decisions that are made tonight, that they will be in line with your will. Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic of one nation, indivisible, with justice for all. Now call this meeting to order. Ms. Hurd, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Hawkins? Here. Mr. Grimes is out. Mr. Spurgers?
Here.
Ms. Mel? Mr. Ledbetter? Mr. Hawks?
Here.
Mr. Jones?
Here.
Ms. Isby?
Here.
And, Courts Counsel, I don't know if you've been updated, Mr. Grimes had another procedure, so he will probably not be back with us, for at least a couple of weeks again.
You know,
I have not talked to him since yesterday. Anyway, you should have received, yeah, 3. You should have received copies of the minutes from the January 28, 2025 council meeting. Any corrections, changes, or comments?
motion to approve?
Second?
Have a motion and a second to approve the minutes as submitted. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 7-0. Next up, we have community development. And Mr. Hawkins, I'll turn this over to you, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First item on this portion of the agenda, is this working? It does not sound like it's working.
Can be David.
Hello?
There you go.
Okay, I'll move over to Mr. Grimes. First item on the agenda is consideration to approve waiving all 3 readings for the ordinances on tonight's agenda, and I'll take a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Have-
Second?
Have a motion and a second to approve the 3 readings for tonight's council meeting. Any further discussion? Ms. Hurd,
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
passes 7-0. Mr. Hawkins,
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is a resolution to approve condemnation of property located at 1001 McNutt Road, number 201 for the Public Works Department. And Mr. Clausen, good evening, sir.
Yes, sir. Good evening. Before we get going, I've got this little packet here I want to pass out. I think these will be beneficial. Okay.
thank you.
Take a moment, look through this, if you will.
Mr. Clausen.
Sir? Should go back.
Yes, this property located at 1001 McNutt Road, trailer number 201 was brought to our attention from Pafford. The Conway Police Department and Fire Department had responded to an emergency call of some elderly people that were in a really bad position. Animal Services came out. We trapped two dogs and 23 cats that had been living in this, along with three grown adults. 2 of them were elderly, close to 80. So once we inspected it, the animals were trapped and removed. We felt it was necessary to deem this as a nuisance structure. When we do that, we take immediate action to make sure that the site is safe and secure. We do that by boarding things up. We placard that it's unsafe to be inside the structure. And also, we get a hold of our inspectors and have our building inspectors come out as subject matter experts to decide whether or not the structure actually is uninhabitable. Okay? So based on their findings, we moved forward with this resolution to have the site demoed, condemned, and ultimately it will need to be demolished. We've gone through all of our procedures as stated in the ordinance, and I bring it to you tonight.
Mr. Finkenbinder, just following up on something I'd asked you about. You feel, and Mr. Clausen, you as well, that we've followed all the appropriate procedures that we have to here, done the appropriate notification?
Charles?
Go ahead.
I was right. Was that to me?
Yes, sir. You feel like we've followed due process, done everything we're supposed to do here?
The city's nuisance abatement code, I don't know if anybody can hear me or even wants to, but in case somebody does, there are 2 different processes in the city's nuisance abatement code. One is deals with notices of violation, and the other deals with notices of condemnation, and they're very different processes. One very significant difference in those 2, when you look at section 6 under administrative procedures, notice of violation, it has very specific methods of service that are required. And those methods of service are as follows: posting on the subject property, regular mail, notice by regular mail, and notice by certified mail, return receipt requested. That's required of a notice of violation. And a notice of condemnation, this is under section 7. It does not have, the city council has not established a nuisance abatement code a requirement for certified mail.
Okay.
Notices by regular mail posting as normal. So and all the time that my office has worked with Mr. Clausen's department, we found his methods of service to be consistent with the statute, with the ordinance.
Great. Yeah, and Mr. Clausen, just to be clear, I wasn't questioning that you guys didn't do your job. I had a citizen ask me, do we have the conversation that we're supposed to before we?
No, certainly,
this
certainly, I
problem.
get that. One thing to note is that, if the council tonight votes to condemn this property, there is a process after that in which certified mail is necessary, okay? But before that, it's not necessary. I will say this, on this case, we went above and beyond what the ordinance requires, posting everything on the property and even hand delivered it to the property owners. So they've been given ample, ample notification, and also the findings of building inspectors and our intent to meet on this tonight.
Appreciate the work that you guys do there. Thank you very much.
Is the family still living there?
No, ma'am. The family's not going to be able to return, even if the trailer was not in the case that it's in. Without getting into too many gory details,
Personal
it was certainly a sad situation. But I believe that they're both in the care of a nursing facility and will probably remain there the rest of their lives.
Is there a representative from the family here tonight?
Not that I saw. I don't know. Not that I saw.
We have a resolution to be read for this item. It's resolution R
03.
2503.
Make a motion for the adoption of the ordinance, the resolution.
Second?
I have a motion and a second to approve this resolution for the condemnation of the property located at 10,001 McNutt Road, number 201 for the Public Works Department. Any further discussion? Ms. Hurd.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Passes 7-0.
Okay. And Ms. Hurd, what was the resolution number for this?
03.
03.
03. Okay.
Mr. Hawkins.
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is an ordinance appropriating funds for the Dave Ward Drive traffic light system for the Transportation Department. And Kurt, are you going? Yes, you are. I see you come.
Good evening. Okay, so this appropriation that we're asking for this evening would essentially provide fiber optic data service to all of the traffic signals along the Dave Ward corridor. That is one of our two main corridors that has an adaptive system installed with it. Currently, all the data connections are coax with modems. We've been having some ongoing issues with that particular system. The way the adaptive system works, without getting into too many details, is essentially it reads the traffic volumes in the corridor and the movements and so forth, and then adapts on the fly. The problem with the current data system that we've got connection with the coax is those modems periodically glitch and drop signal, and even for a very, very short period of time, once that signal drops, the system resets, and it's not able to maintain this real-time connectivity that it needs. A few weeks ago, we reached out to Conway Corporation, asked them to provide us with an estimate of what it would take to get fiber optic to all those signals in that corridor. And they came back with a cost, a little bit less. I think it was we're asking for $130,000. We've got some additional equipment that we need to incorporate into that as well. But their cost estimate, it was the bulk of that. It was, I don't remember the exact number. It was around $120,000, I believe, $125,000. But they indicated to us that they had, contractors available this year and could get the installation complete by the end of the year. So we're asking to appropriate this and move forward with that project and then our plan is hopefully next year to look at providing the same fiber optic service to the Oak Street corridor, smart system or adaptive system that we have.
And this includes the cost of the equipment and the installation?
That is
Kurt?
correct. That is correct.
Thank you.
Any downtime in install there? Just curious.
As far with the signals, nothing more than, I mean, there would probably be, I mean, very minor. You're not going to have, we're talking
Minutes, not
hours,
days. Yeah, okay.
minutes. Yeah.
We have
That
an
will help.
ordinance to be read for this item. It's ordinance 02517.
17.
I'll make a motion for the adoption of the ordinance.
Second?
I have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance to approve the appropriations of funds for the Dave Ward Drive traffic light system for the Transportation Department. Any further discussion? Ms. Hurd?
Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Ms. Mel?
Aye.
Mr. Hawks?
Yes.
Mr. Spurgers?
Aye.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Isby?
Yes.
That passes 7-0. Mr. Hawkins?
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is an ordinance appropriating funds for the installation of computer technology and security equipment for the Transportation Department's new location, 800 South Park Rider. And Kurt, you're still there.
I'm still here.
Yes, sir.
So this is, we have asked our IT department to go take a look at, they've toured the facility, made an inventory list of what we need to provide access control, the network connectivity, security, and so forth at the facility. This represents that estimate that they have put together for us for all the hardware installation and so forth needed for that work to be done.
Any questions?
When do we have a ballpark on when we'll be moving into that building?
So April.
Okay.
We've got some work to do. I think, Conway Corp is not completely out of it, but they're about, what, 90%? They
Okay.
don't like a whole lot.
Council, back to you.
Make a motion for the adoption of the ordinance 02518.
Second?
Have a motion and a second to approve this ordinance for the appropriation of funds for the IT equipment for the new street department location, transportation department locations, pardon me. Any further discussion? Ms. Hurd?
Mr. Spurgers?
Aye.
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Ms. Isby?
Yes.
Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Mel?
Aye.
Mr. Hawks?
Yes.
Passes 7-0. Thank you, Kurt.
Thank you.
Mr. Hawkins,
Yes,
before we
sir.
tell me if we need to vote on anything. Before we bring this next item up, I think the council would like to hear your legal opinion on this next item for Heartland Development. Can we just let you do that, or do we need to take a vote on any of that?
No, I can
Okay.
talk.
Are you okay with that, Mr. Hawkins?
I'm good with that. Let me go ahead and tell people what it is, and that way we'll kind of know what we're talking about. It's an ordinance to approve annexation of 43 acres, 43.05 to be exact, on Sturgis Road. And Ms. Tucker, this was reviewed by the Planning Commission at their January meeting, wasn't it, or was it December?
I believe we finally heard it in January.
Yeah, and at that time, they voted to send it to us with approval.
Yes, sir.
Did they not? Okay, so the planning commission has looked at this. We had this at our last meeting and it was tabled for some conversation and some study. And what Mr. Finkenbinder has come up with, I'd like for all of y'all to hear this, just to make sure that you know what we're looking at tonight. So with that, Charles, I'm gonna turn it over to you.
Well, for those of you, and I'm sure everyone here probably falls in this category, who woke up this morning wondering, when is the city attorney going to talk about contiguity and in context of annexation? Strap yourselves in.
What he call it?
Contiguity. I had to look it up. So let me start by saying this. This comes up and I can use this. So if this is the city property, and this is the property that wants to be annexed, right? If they're like this, there ain't no problem. They're contiguous. I had to look that word up too. No, I'm just kidding. It's in the statute. It's when they're not exactly, or they're like this, or they're like this, or they're like that. That's the question. That's when the question comes up. So what I want to do is just start real quickly, and this will only take about 7.5 hours. I think there's a bathroom break somewhere along the way. So I want to start off by saying this and making this clear. A city council is never required to annex property. Never. It's always 100% up to the city council, even if it meets all the legal requirements. So I wanted to make that clear. There are two types of annexation in general, and that is annexation by a municipality and annexation by the property owners into a municipality. So one is initiated by the city, the other is initiated by the property owners. Now, for the most part, the same standards apply to both of those situations, right? So we start off with what are called the Vestal factors, and this comes from an old case, Vestal versus City of Little Rock. It was an annexation case a while back. And the Vestal court really just kind of followed the statute, and then in some ways, the statute then followed Vestal, maybe because the name sounds cool. But the Vestal criteria, these are 5 criteria used to determine if annexation is proper in the first place. One, whether the property is platted and held for sale or use as municipal lots. Whether platted or not, if the lands are held to be sold as suburban property. 3, whether the lands furnish the abode for a densely settled community or represent the actual growth of the municipality beyond its present boundary. 4, whether the lands are needed for this microphone does. I think I have to do like Elvis and kind of right on it. 4, whether the lands are needed for any proper municipal purposes, such as for the extension of needed police regulation. And 5, whether the lands are valuable by reason of their adaptability for prospective city purposes. So the first thing is, the only reason I'm complaining about the microphone is I know the public needs to be able to hear, and I'm sure wants to hear everything I say, but one of those has to be true, right? So that's kind of the first step. If all that's true, then the other requirement is that the properties must be contiguous. Going back to my demonstration with the code book and the piece of paper. And so the issue then becomes, what is contiguous? You start with just a simple definition of contiguous, and it is sharing a common border or touching. That becomes the rub, no pun intended. When they're touching along their entire length, courts usually don't have any difficulty whatsoever, no matter what's in between them, even a mountain, in determining that it satisfies the requirement that the properties be contiguous. The issue becomes when they don't necessarily touch that way, or they touch in only a very small area of property. There are a couple of cases where the Arkansas Supreme Court really struggled to come up with a good definition, and in my opinion as a lawyer, this is one area that could probably use some legislative clarification on what is and what is not contiguous, to provide cities with a little more clarification, a little more clarity in applying these statutes. But that hasn't happened yet. So what we have to do as lawyers is look to official decisions of the Arkansas Supreme Court interpreting this statute. I haven't forgotten about you, looking that way. And there are a number of cases. And it takes a while, and when you sort of analyze these as you do as a lawyer, it's in some ways it can appear to be like reading the tea leaves, like scattering through the tea leaves and trying to figure out what's the message that I'm trying to get here.
It's just one of those examples where being a lawyer is kind of like being a doctor in some respects, where the patient might say, well, if you take out my spleen, then I'll be okay, right, doc? And the doctor says, I mean, it's kind of like that. So we've got some guideposts from prior decisions and from the Attorney General's office, who a while back sort of weighed into this. And so here's kind of what emerges. There are two really principal cases, I think, when it comes to a situation like this. And let's be clear, and planning and anyone else who knows can clear this up. This is a parcel of about 43 acres that is south of Conway. A couple things that I've learned over the past weeks and months, that this does appear to be an area long-term where it looks like growth for the city. And if you'll remember, that is actually one of the Vestal factors. The city has put a lot of infrastructure in this area, and so that's something I think a court would take into consideration in determining at least the Vestal factors, if not the contiguity requirement. So this parcel of 43 acres, and I'll let Ms. Ann correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that the initial proposal was it was entirely separate from the city, and it was connected to the city limits by Sturgis Road. I believe that's correct.
Yes.
I don't think that originally went past muster with the county judge, and then the change that happened since then, as I understand it, there was a dedication, a right-of-way along that entire length of road to the city. Am I gotten that right?
Correct, by the two property owners. not
So-
yeah.
Now, with that, the two parcels touch. The parcel that is seeking to be annexed by the property owner touches in some way the city. Question is, legally, does that satisfy the requirement for contiguity? And from my perspective as a lawyer, what would a court likely do and if they had to look at this and render a decision? So that's where I look at old cases, as many cases as I could find on contiguity. And there are a number of them, which again, to me is a signal for the legislature that you might want to take a look at the statute. In my view as a lawyer, if courts are constantly having to interpret one word from a statute, it's probably time to either change that word or add a better definition. So there are two cases that I really think provide the most instruction in this area. The first case, I feel like a 50s rock singer without the talent. I keep having to talk into the microphone like this. Clark v. Holt was a case where, this is really annoying, it was a case where the city of Lead Hill attempted to annex in 183 acres of undeveloped property for further municipal expansion, that kind of thing. In that case, the connected link between the proposed annex property, and by the way, this is as fun as this gets. So if anybody's waiting for the funny part, it already happened. In that case, the connecting line was a very narrow strip of land, about 50 feet wide, 3,000 feet long. So we're talking about almost 3/4 of a mile, or maybe even a little bit more. My math is terrible. That's one of the reasons I'm a lawyer. And here's what the court said in Lead Hill when they rejected this attempt by the city of Lead Hill to pull this annexation off. Lead Hill sought to annex a 183-acre tract a half mile from the corporate limits, connected only by a strip 50 feet wide and 3,060 feet long, not dedicated for public use, and traversing terrain, rendering its utilization for platting into lots and blocks or for road construction highly impractical, to say the least. Now that's, to a lawyer, pretty significant language, because it doesn't appear that's what we have here. In fact, we seem to have the opposite. There is a road. Instead of 3,060 feet, it's more like 1,100 feet. So there's not the issues that were important to the Supreme Court in Lead Hill and Clark, important enough to mention specifically as a basis for their decision. Another case, and this one is rarely cited, and in fact, it wasn't even mentioned in the authoritative Attorney General's opinion, and that's the case of Chastain Chastain versus Davis. This is a 1987 Supreme Court of Arkansas case involving annexation of property that is very similar to the property that is at least on the agenda for consideration, the 43 acres along Sturgis Road south of Conway. In this case, there was a road connect. Parcel was entirely separate from the city that was attempting to annex the property. But the Supreme Court said it's connected by a road. And to the Supreme Court in Chastain, that was enough of a connection to make it contiguous. And so I think what emerges from an analysis of those two, what I believe are the lead cases, at least in respect to this situation. In Clark, you had a 3,000-foot, 50-foot strip, no road, no really ability to build a road. Clearly, the only reason to do that would be to connect them. And then you have Chastain, where you had probably just as long of a distance between the parcel sought to be annexed and the city limits, but it was connected by a road. And there wasn't even any mention of a right-of-way, which was also important to Clark. Remember, because the Clark court said, in distinguishing this, that there was no public dedicated right-of-way of this 50-foot strip. Here, there clearly is. So, I said all that to say this. This situation, to me as an attorney, looks a lot more like Chastain than it does like Clark. And Chastain is still good law. So it's my opinion, and again, this is sort of like a weatherman predicting what's going to happen in Texas tomorrow. You can give a percentage, and that's about as close as you can come. But in my opinion as a lawyer, reviewing this case in light of what I believe to be the most directly applicable Supreme Court precedent, this would satisfy the contiguity, I messed up my own word, the contiguous requirement of the statute.
We'll break it down for everybody what he just said. Yes. That's it.
I really should have an interpreter.
The county judge,
You still have 7 hours left, by the way.
the county judge petition was filed January 7th. The county judge signed off on it on January 14th. So that was after he talked with the county attorney as well, and they had all been talking. So this is, I think it's pretty well, all the i's have been dotted and t's crossed.
My only question at this point in time is there something in writing that says from the two landowners that that this road can be built there? Or is there a road there now?
Sturgis Road is there now, and both landowners on either side of the 1,100 feet have put in writing that they are happy to dedicate right-of-way to the city.
Thank you very much. That's all I needed to know.
Now, would you go ahead and proceed with what? Thank
Okay,
you.
I feel like I'm starting all over and I can't get that thing to work. I have some pretty overhead aerials and stuff that I was going to show you, but I can't get that on. But anyway, the applicant is asking to annex 43 acres off of Sturgis Road, which is not contiguous to the current city limits, except for what he just said. He's asking to use the strip of 1,100 feet of Sturgis for the connection. The applicant has obtained a letter from the county judge to release the land and has coordinated with the state GIS office to advise them of his intent. The property owners on either side of the street have agreed to required right-of-way for the 1,100 feet of the road that would become a part of the city. Conway Corporation is in favor of the request, as they would prefer to provide services and connections during the development phase of the property rather than try and acquire it from another provider should it be annexed at a later date. The applicant is requesting the property be annexed with an R1 zoning to allow for a subdivision development. A development plan has not been submitted at this time, but the applicant intends on the project being all single-family homes.
Very good.
Well, there's one correction. It should be Ward 4 in section
Yes,
2.
yes.
Take it.
Okay.
We're not giving it away.
With all of that being said and read and stated, we have an ordinance to read for this item. Now, before we do this, is Mr. Hart still here?
It was
Mr.
my
Hart.
understanding that Mr. Hart was going to pull the request tonight. I don't know if that's still the plan.
I wanted Mr. Hart to hear this
Okay.
after I visited with the city attorney today.
Okay.
Mr. Hart, it's now in your court, sir. Would you like to come to the front and tell us whether you'd like to leave this on here or pull this off of the agenda for another time and place to be serenaded by Mr. Finkenbinder one more time?
Oh, I'm Mitch Hart. I live at 1401 Hogan Lane. There was one issue that was related to contiguous, whether we contiguous or not. That was brought up through my discussions with the Conway. Conway, the city brought that to my attention a couple weeks ago. And it was an issue. So we were looking for a legal decision as to whether it was felt by the city attorney if we were contiguous. And I guess I listened very carefully, but you said yes, right? I know I listened more carefully than anyone else in this room. I can guarantee you that. But we are contiguous, correct?
I believe so. That's my opinion.
Now, thank you for that. At that point, that was the only issue that was brought to my attention that might be a problem for y'all. Since we were legally able to proceed forward, I suggest that we proceed forward rapidly.
That answered your question for you. I mean, all that rhetoric he had, but that answered your question. Yes, is what you was listening for.
That's all I was listening for, was whether I was contiguous or not. That was the question. So, Mr. Jones.
I'm glad it didn't take 7 hours.
But people don't normally like to hear from me again either, so I guess we might as well go ahead. If y'all are okay with that, if y'all have enough information to make a decision tonight, as long as the decision is yes, I'm all in. But thank you. Y'all have any questions for me? No, thank you. Thank you. By the way, I've been working with the city for a long time. They've helped me through the process, so thank you for that.
Thank you, Mitch.
Thank you, Mr. Hart.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Council, back to you.
We have an ordinance to read for this item. It's ordinance 2519. Is that correct? 19? I'll take a motion.
Second. You move? Is that
I
you?
did not,
Oh,
no.
I moved it.
Very good. We have a motion
And I'll second that
and a second.
motion.
We have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance to annex property at 43 acres on Sturgis Road. Any further discussion?
I'm
Would-
just glad
would you-
got a
Would you like to say
lawyer
anything else, Mr.
to
Finkenbinder?
explain
There are a lot of other topics I could talk about.
Ms. Hurd.
Mel,
Aye.
Ms. Isby,
Yes.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Ledbetter,
Yes.
Mr. Hawks,
Yes.
Mr. Hawkins,
Yes.
Mr. Spurgers.
That passes 7-0. Thank you, Mr. Hawkins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Next up, we have the Public Safety Committee, and first up is ordinance to approve the appropriation funds for the Conway Emergency Operations Center. Mr. Kennedy.
Good evening, council.
Good evening.
We have a bunch of batteries that we got sold off to scrap. It was part of our old battery backup system. And this is what we received on that. We're just asking to go back into our building maintenance.
Make a motion for the adoption of the ordinance 02520.
Second?
Have a motion and a second to approve this ordinance appropriating funds for the Conway Emergency Operations Center. Any further discussion? Ms. Hurd.
Mr. Hawkins,
Yes.
Mr. Ledbetter,
Yes.
Mr. Spurgers,
Aye.
Ms. Isby,
Yes.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Hawks,
Yes.
Ms. Mel.
Aye.
That passes 7-0. Next up, we have an ordinance to approve the appropriation of grants funds for the Arkansas Department of Public Safety grant for the Conway Police Department. Chief Harris.
Charles, I apologize. I couldn't hear back there. Could you repeat that?
I absolutely could repeat every bit of that.
Good. So yes, first, we put in for actually, we didn't. I have to give Robbie credit. Robbie did it all, so we didn't do anything. Robbie did, so we appreciate him. We just get to reap the benefits. But it's for a public safety equipment grant. So what we asked for the state was just enough money to purchase 2 more drones. Previously, we purchased 3. These 2 will now give us 1 drone per shift, plus our crime suppression team. So no matter who's working or what days, what time, we'll have
They'll
drone
have it available.
capabilities.
I'll make a motion for the adoption of the ordinance 02521.
Second?
Have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance for appropriation of funds for the grant funds for from the Arkansas Department of Public Safety to the Conway Police Department. Any further discussion? Ms. Hurd.
Mr. Ledbetter? Yes. Mr. Spurgers?
Aye.
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Ms. Isby?
Yes.
Ms. Mel?
Aye.
Mr. Hawks? Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Passes 7-0. And council, the last item we have is an ordinance to approve the appropriation of funds for vehicles with Conway Police Department. And I will, I told Chief I'd help him with this. Back when the council and the city passed the sales tax, I can't remember, is the last one of Mayor Townsend's term, I think. The city put funds to buy fire trucks at that time. Fire department purchased their trucks. The money was then rolled over to the Conway Police Department. And I think it was about about $500,000 a year. And at that time, police cars were about $50,000 a piece, so they were able to buy about 10 each year. They had that cycle going. We cut that, they split that amount with fire department so that they could make payment on a new truck, which cut them to $250,000. He was getting ready to buy them, and he reminded me that I had not plugged his cars in for this year, so really this is on me. So what I'm asking I told him, I said I would explain to the council that I'm the guy that pulled it out of their budget and did not put it back in. So he has the $250,000, which will buy a car and a half, I guess. But I'm asking for, it is $500,000 from the, which fund is it, Felicia? Pay as you go, in order for them to buy this number of cars this year. Is that pretty fair, Chief?
Yes, sir.
You owe me one.
I move for adoption of the ordinance.
Have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance to purchase police vehicles with the emergency clause. Any further discussion? Yes, sir.
Last time we tried it, we had a problem with getting people. Are these available?
Yes, we actually, Bale Chevrolet now in Little Rock has now got on the state contract. So they're actually holding vehicles for us right now. So soon as this gets passed.
Last time we had a
Oh, yeah,
problem.
it was a problem.
Yeah. Thanks for asking that, Mr. Jones. Ms. Hurd.
Ms. Mel?
Aye.
Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
Mr. Spurgers?
Aye.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Isby?
Yes.
Mr. Hawks?
Yes.
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
And the emergency clause, Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
Ms. Mel?
Aye.
Mr. Spurgers?
Aye.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Isby?
Yes.
Mr. Hawks?
Yes.
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Those both pass 7-0. Thank you, Chief.
Thank
you. Council, as you were aware, a while back, we voted on a landscape ordinance here in the city. And since then, there's been some questions about it. So I met with Spencer, and we've not started enforcing any of that. And before we start on that, we're going to have a sit down with the county extension agent and also look for some public input on that. And then we'll go from there. Is that perfect? That'll work. Anyway, also put this on your schedule. Monday, February 24th at 4:30 p.m. We're going to have a ribbon cutting for our new soccer facility. So we'll be able to play ball this year. And I'm really excited. We had over 600 kids sign up just for recreational soccer. So it's going to be a big year for soccer. Not only do we have our tournaments in Conway, but we got a lot of kids who in the past didn't get a chance to play them. I'm sorry. 4:30.
Okay.
Since I'm in charge of the lazy river, are you gonna get out and kick the soccer ball at the dedication?
Listen, if I kick something, I will probably not be able to walk the next day. I don't know if I could stand up and kick anything. But anyway, council, that's all we have tonight. I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We are adjourned. Thank you all.